Assalamu alaikum and good morning, and welcome you all guys in the lecture of the series of the research subject. In the today lecture we will go to learn about the research design and the diagrammatic sketch of the different type of the research design. In the previous lecture we learned what is the research design. Has simply the simple definition to define the terms of the research design. It is the blueprint of the research study or the research project. It is explain the overall strategy or methodology of the research study or research project, how you will go to conduct the research study or research project in a systematic way. Now the research design is divided in the two broad categories or two broad types. The first type of the research design is called the observational study design, and the second type of the research design is called the experimental study design. Now the observational study design is the type of those research design in which the researcher do not involve any activity or any intervention, either it is a medical or surgical or the nursing intervention, or do not involve or conduct or perform any drugs trial. So it is called the observational study design, which is conducted in a natural setting. Now the second type of the research design is called the experimental study design. Now the experimental study design is the type of those research study design in which the researcher or the public health specialist or the scientist involve or perform any activity or any intervention, either it is a medical, surgical or nursing, and the researcher conduct or perform any drugs trial in the laboratory. So it is called the experimental study design. Now the observational study design is further divided in the two types. The first type of the observational study design is called the descriptive study design, and the second one is called the analytical study design. Now what is the difference between the descriptive study design and the analytical study design? The descriptive study design is the type of the observational study design in which the researcher collects the information or the data and summarize and organize the data and come up with the concrete conclusion to describe the result in the form of the numbers, okay, or in the percentage or proportion or in the frequency table, right? And in the descriptive study design, the researcher do not prove is research question or research hypothesis. Now the second type of the observational study design, which is conducted in the natural setting, it's called the analytical study design. Now the analytical study design is the type of the observational study design in which the researcher conduct the study and collect the information, organize and summarize the information, but in the research design it is prove his hypothesis or the research question in an analytical study design. In the analytical study design, always the researcher prove his hypothesis and the research question with application of the different statistical methodology and then the research methodology. Now the descriptive study design have the three to four types of the descriptive study design. The one of the type of the descriptive study design is the case report. The case report is the descriptive study design in which the researcher conduct a study on the single individuals or the single group in detailed investigation about that particular type of the case report of any disease of any case. Just like they give the example, the best example of the Omicron variant, which is come up, which is case reported a couple of weeks in the Karachi. Now the case series is a step ahead of the case study. It's the same. If suppose in the coming months, the many other cases of the Omicron will be identified in the Karachi or in the Pakistan. So if any researcher will conduct the study of the similar cases of the Omicron, which is come up with the 10 and 20 number of the cases, that's called the case series, which is a step ahead of the case study. Now the third form of the descriptive study design is called the survey, and the survey is the set of the questions which is the researcher will collect the information about the any demography, about the pupils about the any socio-economics or the characteristic or the social status of that particular locality or that particular population. We will go to learn one by one more in detail in the coming lecture. Here in the today lecture, I just only explain the diagrammatic structures of the different type of the research study design which is used in the research subject or the research projects. Now the fourth type of the descriptive study design is called the ecological study design. And the ecological study design is the study design, descriptive study design, in which the researcher conduct the study of the ecosystem, the application of the ecosystem on the health of the population or the health of the area of the people. That just like give the example of the water, contamination of the water, noise pollution or air pollution, and also the relationship of the ultraviolet rays with the causes of the cancer in the particular population or the particular geographical area. So it is all come up in the ecological studies. Nowadays you can see the many different type of the studies has been conducted in the lockdown of the COVID-19. The ecological ecosystem of the earth, of the globe, the global warming, and the depletion of the ozone gas, and also the weather changes has been come up in the COVID-19 during the COVID-19 lockdown. So these type of the ecological studies has been conducted by the different researchers in the different geographical area of the globe. Now another type of the descriptive study design, which is called the cross-sectional study design. The cross-sectional study design is the only one study design which is you can conduct a researcher or you can conduct in the descriptive study design, and you can also conduct in the analytical study design as well. And the cross-sectional study design, just briefly explain about the cross-sectional study design. Cross-sectional study design is the snapshot study design in which the researcher simultaneously at the same time to measure the risk factor or causative factor and the outcome of any disease or any abnormality or any effects. Now another type of the observational study. Now we will come up on the analytical study design. As I explained earlier, that the analytical study design is the type of those study design in which the researcher prove is the hypothesis and the research question by using different type of the statistical methodology and by the different statistical methodology and the research methodology. Now in analytical study design, the first type is the same cross-sectional study design. SD. Okay. The second one is the case control. And the third one is a cohort study design. Just explain here briefly about each type of the analytical study design. Cross-sectional, as I told you earlier, is a snapshot of study design in which you can measure the risk factor and outcome at the same time. You can conduct the cross-sectional study design in the descriptive way, and you can also conduct the cross-sectional study design in an analytical study design as well. Now the second type of the study design of the analytical study design is called the cases and control. In the cases and control, you select if you will go, for example, if you will go in the Noori hospital, from the Noori hospital, you select the 20 patient of the oral cancer, and then you will go back retrospectively to find out the risk factors of the cases of the oral cancer. What was the causes or the risk factor by which they get the oral cancer. Okay. In the cases, you will select the cases, you select the patient who have the disease, and then you will go back to find out the risk factor and causative factor of that particular disease. And you also select the 20 control to compare the disease. Definitely those who have the oral cancer and the control who have not the oral cancer, but they have the proportion of the risk factor of that oral cancer in the cases will become up as a more and quite much in the higher odd ratio as compared in the control group, just to compare it. Now the third type of the analytical study design, in which the cohort is the inverse of the case control. In the cohort is the derived from the Greek word of the cohorts, which means to follower or to follower soldiers is the Greek word. And the cohort, in the cohort you select the exposure and non-exposure group, and then you will go to follow for the next 5 years. Suppose take the example of you selected the randomly 10 exposure who have exposed of who are doing the smoking, and the 10 who are not doing the smoking, and then you follow for the next 5 years or 10 years. Then you will see who developed the oral cancer or the lungs cancer in the smoker. So definitely in the exposure group, the risk of the developing of the lungs cancer will come up with the quite much is higher as compared of the non-exposure group. So we will go to learn more in detail each by each research subject in the coming lectures. Now the cohort is divided in the 2 types. One is called the prospective cohort study design, study design, and the second one is called the retrospective cohort study design. Right? One is called the There are further two types of the cohort study design. One is called the prospective cohort study design, and the second one is called the retrospective cohort study design. Let me brief in the few words about the prospective cohort study design and retrospective cohort study. The prospective cohort study design is those